after the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, Boris Johnson's government has proposed a new version of the Brexit deal that the European Union is now considering. The Prime Minister said the UK will leave the EU by October 31st, with or without a deal. But British members of Parliament voted to lock the Prime Minister into asking the EU for an extension to the negotiating period if he can't get a new deal approved by Parliament. So as the EU leaders convene in Brussels this week, two big questions remain on the table. Will the EU and the UK manage to forge a new deal that may stand a better chance of getting through Parliament? Or, if no new deal is agreed, will the 27 other member states agree to give the UK more time? Whatever the answers, British MPs are set to meet on Saturday in an extraordinary session to debate what happens next with Brexit.
There are lots of reasons why people voted Brexit, but many of them are covered by one word: sovereignty. Brexiteers don't like to share it, from how many fish you can catch to who gets to live here and which court ultimately has the final say over British citizens. Many Brits get pretty cranky at the idea of having to follow rules and regulations set in Brussels, often by people they haven't voted for.
Well, it's no secret that the EU regrets Brexit and views it as a historic mistake. If a country as large and as powerful as the UK wants to leave the club, a country which helped shape the single market and benefits immensely from security cooperation among many other things, what does that say about the state of the club itself? Nothing good. And so the EU's primary focus throughout the negotiations has been on damage control.
The British pound has slumped since the UK voted to leave the EU, and it could fall even further in the event of a hard or no-deal Brexit. Now, that may be some good news for tourists hoping for a cheap trip to the UK, and for some British businesses which are export-heavy. But it's bad news for many. The cost of living for Brits is rising as imports become more expensive, and it's a similar story for some British businesses which have to import raw materials. Plus, all the uncertainty over what the future trading relationship will be between the UK and the EU, well, that's forced some businesses to already hit their contingency plans. Big banks, for example, have already moved some operations from the UK to the EU.
The UK has been in decline for a century. Brexit is a milestone on that downward trajectory. Far from taking back control and turning the UK's fortunes around, it will leave the kingdom's citizens more isolated from allies, alliances and markets. Economic growth will be slower, intelligence sharing curtailed. But it's not as bleak as it sounds. The UK still has clout. It remains one of the 5 permanent members of the world's most powerful diplomatic body, the UN Security Council. Change won't be overnight, but the future as it comes will depend more on the billions of people beyond its borders than in the past.
Perhaps not unexpectedly, President Trump is trying to get political mileage from the Democratic walkout of today's Syria meeting at the White House. With the words Nancy Pelosi's unhinged meltdown, the president tweeted out an official White House photo, this photo of the session, showing the speaker standing up and pointing her finger in the direction of the president as his team bracketed him. The president has a hard-to-read look on his face. You can judge for yourself. It is meant as an insult. Now, normally we wouldn't actually show this photograph because it was taken by an official White House photographer and there was no pool reporters present who could actually vouch for the accuracy of what was happening in that moment. But we're showing it to you because moments after the president posted his tweet, the speaker made the photo the cover on her official Twitter page and now is using it for her own purposes. David, I mean, this photo that the president tweeted out today's meeting, it's clearly trying to cast Speaker Pelosi as the one having the meltdown, which is the word she used to describe the president's behaviors. I mean, I don't know. What do you make of this whole meeting? I mean, is it the Democrats simply trying to make hay out of a meeting, that went badly, or is it reason for real concern?
Look, we're talking about the meeting. The subject of the meeting is what should really concern people. Donald Trump spent, a lifetime in business. His practice was to abrogate contracts and agreements. Now he's raised that to the level of national policy in the world, American policy in the world. And what's happened over the last 10 days is truly horrifying. And that's why they were there, to talk about this policy. And, I think he's losing it. I mean, I think he is feeling the pressure of this impeachment.
Today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi saying that everything was completely changed after President Trump came out and admitted that he did indeed in some form speak with and potentially pressure the Ukrainian president to investigate Joe Biden.
This isn't relitigating the past. This isn't relitigating the election with Hillary Clinton. This is about the president abusing his office in seeking political dirt about an election that's upcoming.
I think you have more people on the side of saying politics be damned here for a moment. There may be a real moral call that there's a constitutional responsibility here to hold the president accountable.
That call was perfect. It couldn't have been nicer. What Joe Biden did for his son, that's something they should be looking at.
This is a 5-page transcript. It appears to be a nearly complete transcript of the July call where President Trump asked Ukrainian President Zelensky several times to collaborate with Attorney General Barr and his attorney, Rudy Giuliani, to look into Biden and his son Hunter. Now, he doesn't specifically mention military aid, but says the U.S. has been, quote, very, very good to Ukraine. So not an explicit quid pro quo, but the president was clearly teeing up his requests to Ukraine.
Impeachment for that?
From my point of view, to impeach any president over a phone call like this would be insane.
The American people are going to view this and roll their eyes because it's going to sound to them like much of the same thing they've been hearing for the last 3 years.
So what's the process? How does impeachment work? Well, the investigation is going to go forward, and if the people in charge of the House of Representatives, the Democrats, think that there is enough to go forward with impeachment, the House Judiciary Committee will consider what's called articles of impeachment, which are specific charges. And if they vote articles of impeachment, then the full House of Representatives will vote on whether Donald Trump will be impeached. Now, if there is a majority in support of impeachment, Donald Trump doesn't lose his office. That's like a formal charge. It's like an indictment. So if Donald Trump is indicted the way Bill Clinton was impeached, then the case will go to the United States Senate. It takes 2/3, 67 votes in the Senate, to remove a president from office. I think everyone believes it's very unlikely in a Republican-controlled Senate.
Impeaching Trump could epically backfire on Democrats heading into the 2020 election cycle. They've got plenty of races to focus on winning instead of trying to undo a race that they, sorry Democrats, already lost. It would, simply put, turn Trump into a victim, a place he loves to be. Impeaching Trump in the House without a real chance of the Senate following suit hands the president the ability to say that Democrats hate him so much that they are unfairly targeting him and ignoring their responsibilities to the country.